Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second module of the WCCDS Occupational Therapies Supporting Children with Sensory Processing Difficulties webinar. We hope that you got a chance to really digest the information from the first module, um, and we're hoping in this module to bring in the more practical element because you have a pretty good idea now of this stage what your child's profile is generally like. My name is Trish, as you know, and I'm the occupational therapist working over in the Clonakilty area. And
Hi everybody, my name is Aileen. I'm joining you today for Module 2 and I'm the occupational therapist working in the Skibbereen catchment area with the WCCDS.
So we'll do a quick overview of what's ahead of us. So we're going to speak briefly about regulation, and then we're going to talk through strategies and resources that you can use at home and in school and in the community for your child. Things like a sensory diet, some regulation tools, the use of planners and scheduling, proprioceptive activities. We're big fans of proprioceptive activities, a regulation passport, and the environment. We'll talk through some examples of a sensory diet and we'll go through one or through two problem scenarios, and then we'll give you some signposting towards some useful resources that you may find handy for your family situation. So from a regulation point of view, every human moves through the different states of regulation or arousal throughout the day. In general, some people tend to spend more time in higher or some people tend to spend more time in higher or lower states of arousal. And you can see here from this picture, when you're in that lovely green middle state, that calm, alert state, that's when your nervous system and you are ready for work, for play. You're feeling relaxed but focused. You're able to listen. Emotionally, you're feeling pretty calm. Um, and then as different sensory events happen to your nervous system, you may move up into that hyper excited red zone. Um, and sometimes being in that red zone is okay. For example, if you're at the side of a football pitch and you're roaring at your team to score a goal. But being in that hyper excited red zone place in a classroom or in a preschool isn't isn't helpful for anybody. Um, and then on the other end of it, you'll see we have a blue zone there with people when you move into that sluggish or tired or spaced out state. So again, if you're getting ready for bed or you're getting ready for a nap, being in that blue zone is really appropriate and helpful for your nervous system to relax into the sleep state. But if you're feeling like that at an important meeting or you're feeling like that during an exam, it's not very it's not going to help you do give your best performance or participate the best that you can do. So it's very important in to remember this in as well as your child's sensory profile, because different we'll all need different tools to try and keep our unique profile in the green zone as much as possible. Um, so you can see there sometimes for younger children, we also use the analogy of Winnie the Pooh being in the green zone, Tigger being in the red zone, and Eeyore being in the blue zone. So if we think about each sensory system and how we can use tools to calm or alert our nervous system into nudging us into that green zone when appropriate. You'll have received this in your resource pack, and it's a handy one to have and to return to. I think a lot of the professionals that you will have come into contact with will use this as a baseline. So you can see there the vestibular system, so that's our balance and movement system. Um, to alert that, you can use rotation, which is turning. You can use inversion, so head over heels, or activities that provide increased heart rate. So a game of chase, cycling, anything that gets your heart rate going is alerting for your vestibular system. If we go over towards move on towards the proprioceptive system. This, the proprioceptive system is interesting. It's very hard to use your proprioception in an alerting way, and it only tends to be alerting when it's combined with movement. Um, so, if you're using a proprioceptive tool for to help alert your child, you will need to combine it with movement. So, for example, jumping on a trampoline. So they're getting that lovely proprioceptive input from their joints, but they're also getting they're also getting the intense movement on the trampoline. Other other alerting other alerting strategies from the tactile and the auditory are so within the tactile system. So your tactile system, as we know, is very alerting because it's a protective system. It keeps us safe. Um, and so light touch, so tickle or a quick ruffle of the head is quite alerting. And also pain. Obviously, if you put your hand on a hot stove, that's also alerting. The auditory and the visual system, again, if we think about what is an alerting input for these systems, high pitch, loud sounds, quick tempo, bright lights, intense colors, erratic tempos, they're all very alerting for those systems. And finally, your taste system. So when you're thinking about your child who has the large sensory cup, and you're thinking about what to put in their lunchbox for to help them meet their sensory needs. You're thinking about textures and flavors. So you're going to put chewy and crunchy foods in there. You're also going to edge more towards spicy, salty, minty, and sour flavors. So this that's a summary really of how each of the sensory systems how we can alert each of those sensory systems, and particularly useful, as we said, for those children who have the larger sensory cups, and so who need lots of sensory input, or indeed any children that are tending towards the blue zone or tending down towards the end of that regulation tool, that regulation chart, that blue zone, and they need alerting activities. On the flip side of it is, how do we use each of these systems to provide a calming experience for the nervous system? So to push the nervous system deeper into the green zone, or to push them further away from hitting that red one. So with the vestibular system, so your balance and movement system, backwards and forwards movement, so swinging and rocking, is very calming. And we know this instinctively because this is what we do to a baby's nervous system as we're helping them go to sleep. We provide a rocking back and forth movement for their vestibular system. When we move to the proprioceptive system, so the proprioceptive system, and Aileen will go into more detail in this later on, is the main system, or the most effective system for providing calming input into the nervous system. So any heavy weighted activities, any lifting, pushing, pulling, think of doing weights at the gym, walking with your weighted backpack, pulling things in from the car, moving heavy things around the garden, they all have very calming input on the proprioceptive system. The tactile system, very specific with the tactile system. What is calming for the tactile system? So deep and firm pressure. So as adults, we can think about massage, deep, firm pressure. A deep hug, so where a hug is held and some firm pressure is given as well. It's very calming for the tactile system. And we mentioned vibration here. Sometimes vibration can be initially can be quite shocking or surprising to a child's nervous system. But if they can tolerate it, then because the information from vibration is carried on the same nerve fibers as the deep and firm pressure. So if they can tolerate that initial and get used to it, then it can have a very calming, lovely effect on the tactile system. From an auditory and visual point of view, again, it's instinctively probably what you do and what you know. So the white noise, slow, soft tempo, lower volumes, and visually soft, neutral colors, soft lighting, clearer surfaces. And then finally, the taste sense. Um, so any of the soft, bland, sweet um, textures and flavors have a calming effect on the nervous system, as opposed to the alerting effect of the chewy and crunchy. So you can see, if you keep this on your fridge, or you keep this in your available to you, that as you become more familiar with what works for your child's sensory profile, that you can really pick and choose from this menu um, of activities that you can insert throughout your child's day to help them navigate.
Thanks, Trish. And just to reiterate what Trish said there as well about each child's profile being unique, we use that table as a real guide, but not every child completely fits into that. I think Trish mentioned, for example, with vibration, it can be very calming, but also if a child cannot tolerate it, that can be alerting. So it's not an absolute Bible, but it's just it's a very, very useful guideline, and everyone is different. So we're going to talk a little bit more about strategies and resources now that we can use to follow on from that table. Later we'll just show you some useful websites and resources that we recommend a lot. We'll do that at the end. Because there's some very kind of helpful activities to put into practice some of those strategies for different age groups. So we're going to start talking now about what we call what's used a lot, the term the sensory diet. You may already have heard it from in relation to your child, but basically what a sensory diet is. It's a planned schedule of activities that you use at different stages of the day. And similar to a food diet, we might all have different food diets that, suit us. You may have meals at certain times of the day, or you might be a snacker and you have many, many snacks, and you might do that because that's what suits you. So sensory diet is all about incorporating the type of sensory activities that you need or your child needs at different stages of the day, and having sensory snacks as part of that. And that can be supported by having we're going to talk later about some of the tools that we use to support having a sensory diet throughout the day. So things like visual schedules and timers and choice boards. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. So how do you go about creating one of these sensory diets? So first, it's all about, I suppose, being a little bit of a detective, and we worked on this, or you would have talked about it in module 1. So first, just trying to figure out what is calming for your child. So what are the tools, or what sensory systems do you really need to hook for your child? So what's calming and organizing on their sensory system? We also need to know what is disorganizing, because we want to try and avoid that as much as possible. Obviously, we cannot completely plan our days. Unpredictable things will happen, but where possible, we want to keep that green zone that Trish talked about, keep our nervous systems in that green zone for as much of the day as possible. So where we can, we're going to avoid the disorganizing activities. And finally, we're going to try and plan as much as possible. We're going to put in place predictable activities, because there's nothing more helpful for a child who's going to be worried about an upsetting event or something upsetting happening in their environment, than not knowing what's going to happen. So having a plan can be one of the most powerful things that you can do to help your child with sensory processing difficulties. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit now about some commonly used regulation tools. So first of all, I just want to say that regulation tools don't have to be expensive, tools that you have to buy on websites or in expensive shops. There are many things in our homes and our around us that we automatically use. There's many children who chew on different things, or they may be using their water bottle to suck on regularly, and actually that is a regulation tool because they're using their oral sense and sucking to calm their nervous system. But here we're just going to talk a little bit ones that you might be less familiar with for the purpose of the webinar. So sometimes we'll start at the top left hand corner there. There's some kind of tactile mats there. We talked about in module 1 the tactile system can be quite, I suppose we talk about lots of nerve receptors on the skin, on the palms of our hands, in our mouths, and the soles of our feet as well. So for some children who are seeking tactile input, it might actually help the child to stay in a particular place for longer by having that input. Similarly, you could use different surfaces, things like fidget tools. Again, you're using your tactile sense to engage your brain. So again, that might be very useful for the child who needs to sit and wait in a space, or for circle time in play school, or for listening and work time in school. We have in the top right hand corner there some TheraBand on a desk, and that the child is pushing against that TheraBand with their legs and their feet. That's giving them some resistance, and it's engaging their proprioceptive system, and that's really tactile and proprioceptive system. So that can be quite helpful for somebody who might need to move or to use their sensory systems to stay at an activity and to sit for a period. Another commonly used tool in schools is the move and sit cushion. So that's that blue cushion that the boy in the bottom right hand corner is sitting on. You may have seen these in preschools or school environments. This particular one is a wedge shape, and it's got some bumps on the top surface of it. The theory is that it's got some air in it, not completely inflated, but partially inflated, so that when you move from side to side, or when you slightly move, I should say, you're getting a lot more input to your body, and it's engaging both your vestibular, your movement system, and your proprioceptive system. So it's helping you to get a little bit more input and help you to engage, to be aware of where your body is in space and where you are on the chair. It can be helpful for children who fall off their chairs a lot, for example. It's just giving them a lot more information and giving them more input, and again that can be a useful tool to help children to stay for longer as well. There's other versions of those. They're called disco sit cushions that are round if a child doesn't like the wedge, or similarly the bumps on it and provide some tactile input, but your child might prefer, it might be too much and they might prefer the smoother side, so you can just turn it upside down as long as the narrow end is towards the front of the chair. Next, we've got some chewy necklaces. There's a huge variety of chewy tools on the market. You'll see lots and lots of them on websites. And even teething toys can be adapted, but some are more, there's a huge degree and variation in the density or how tough they are for children who really go at it and chew very hard. So these might be really useful for the child who comes home with the cuffs of their sleeves all wet, or their collars of their shirt, from using their mouths to regulate and maybe to concentrate while they're doing their work at school, or maybe if they're a little bit nervous in a certain scenario. It's really interesting to have a look at the different versions. There's ones that look like Lego. There's ones that chewy tools that can go at the top of your pencil. So they're non-toxic versions of, instead of just chewing on the lead of your pencil, and can really help you to meet your need to get some oral input to help you to concentrate or to stay regulated and calm. The next tool that's shown there on the screen is the weighted lap pad, that blue blanket there. So weighted tools, I suppose, would be fairly commonly known as can be quite calming for the sensory system. There's a huge variety of weighted tools. There you can also get some vest formats or blankets for supporting children to calm or to get to sleep. The general guideline that we would use is to use a weighted tool that's no more than 10 to 15% of your child's body weight. And there's some other precautions to take. So please discuss it with your local OT if you're considering using any weighted tools that can be very effective. And a lot of the ones that you buy have pockets of weighted material that can be removed, so you can alter the weight according to your child's size. So please refer to any of us, if you want to chat a bit more about using any of those. And the last one that's shown there is a pressure vest. So that's we talked about the weighted vest. So pressure vest is really using the principle of deep pressure that Trish talked about there, and that you would have learned about in module 1, is generally being quite calming. The concept of this is like that is that really you're getting a big hug for an extended period of time, and that can be quite calming. These are usually you can alter the degree of the tension by using the Velcro on the vest. And they can be quite effective as well for the child who likes them. And with all of these tools, I suppose we would say you need some time to get used to them. There can be a novelty period where children want to use them, and then that maybe wears off, and then you'll know after a period of a few weeks whether or not it's actually effective. And similarly, you can start using a tool and a child might reject it initially, but it is worth trying it a number of times to really see if something is effective or not. Sorry, I didn't mention there the what's shown as the noise cancelling headphones. These can be really useful for a child who's quite sensitive to sound. There's a lot of different types of headphones. So there's quite expensive noise cancelling headphones that can be useful for children who are very sensitive to certain frequency of sounds, often ones that we might not even pick up on in the environment. You can get more basic ear defenders as well that just dampen down, they create kind of a hollow sound, and you'll be more familiar with those used kind of in mainstream settings, in loud concerts or matches and things like that. So they're all options that you can use to help support your child if you need to go somewhere as a family or to a busy setting like a shopping centre or a parade, or like I said, a concert or something. It can be handy to have in your bag or in your child's rucksack to pull out and use where useful. And then the next slide is showing some more tools. Some of these might be more useful with older or younger children. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about using visuals in the minute. The first one there, the Halloween trick-or-treating, is an example of a story, and it shows how to prepare your child for a situation that might have a lot of sensory challenges in it. For example, trick-or-treating, we know that's a very it's very enriched with a lot of auditory or visual or various types of sensory input, and that can be very overwhelming for a child. So again, as we're talking about preparing a child, the peanut ball, we're going to go into a little bit more detail later about how we can use a peanut ball really effectively. That girl there at school is working with a pop-up partition around her. These are really useful for eliminating or at least cutting down on the visual stimuli that can be very distracting. For maybe a teenager or an older child, they might want to reduce their visual input by simply using a hood on their jacket, or on their hoodie, and that can be very simple way of doing that for them. Similarly, for kids who would like to wear sunglasses a lot to cut out some of that visually stimulating light, We've got an example of a timer there, so we're going to talk a little bit more about visuals again in a minute. And there's a huge variety of timers on the market as well, and they can be really, really useful tools to have at home or in school as well. And that child down the bottom there is coming out of a dark den, so it's just like a really big tent that's just particularly dark. Again, that can be very, very calming, and it can be useful to have just in a small area. If you can't leave an environment, at least you can have that in say in the back of a preschool room, for example, or if there's childminders, for example, or somewhere where you need to stay in a room, but can have an option to go and chill out if needed. So that's a nice option as well, and many preschools actually have examples of those as well. So I don't know if you want to add anything to any of those, Trish, or.
And sometimes it can be tricky, as I said at the beginning, because there's such a variety out there, and sometimes it is um, trying things, trying trying things, and finding the right
I'm not sure if it's just me, Trish, but you're quite low there.
volume. Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
is that a bit better?
that's much better. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying that there's such a variety out there that sometimes there is a bit of trial and error in trying, particularly say with the chewies and things like that, that your child may not like a particular one, but may like another one. So it can be a bit tricky. But as Aileen said, phone your OT, talk things through. With the bigger items, sometimes we can lend them out. We have some that we can lend out to people so they can try them for a couple of weeks. So yeah, it's always worth phoning your OT to talk things through. So I'm going to move on here to another a tool that we'd like most of our families who have kids with sensory processing difficulties, we'd like them to be using visual planners, and visual planners have lots of purposes and work for very many reasons, but particularly for our children and young people whose sensory systems or their experience of the world can be a little bit unpredictable sometimes, and it can be can make them quite anxious because they're not really sure how their bodies are going to respond to different environments. So what a visual planner will do is it'll help a child anticipate the sensory changes in their environment so that they can emotionally prepare themselves, either by talking to mommy or daddy or nana and granddad about it. And it also gives them or you as their adults a way to plan things to help them access that activity in a way that's comfortable. So for example, if some of the kids from their class are going to the cinema together and your child would like to go to the cinema, but they're not really sure about how it, having it on your visual planner allows everyone in the family, particularly you and your child, it gives you enough time to go, okay, cinema's coming, you're feeling a bit nervous about it, but you really want to go. How can we do this? What will we do? Will we bring along our headphones? Will I sit in the row behind, and do you want to be able to come out for toilet breaks? Will we arrive? So it helps you plan with your child so that they can enjoy their routine and enjoy their daily activities. Um, so there's many different types of planners. You can get as complex or as simple as you want. Um, Really, it depends on the age of your child, their language level. It also depends on ye as a family, how it works for you. But this is an example of quite a detailed visual schedule, and it, as he said, because a child can't predict how regulated they're going to be on any day or time, it's very helpful for them to be able to fall back on a routine um, at all. So um, with a visual schedule like this, um, it's very clear the child can go through their morning routine before before they get ready to get into the car to go out the door on a morning that they've woken up, gotten out of bed on the wrong side, or the family is a little bit more, the atmosphere is a little bit more chaotic for them. They can revert and go back and check this and very much hang their emotional and sensory needs on these 5 steps that they know they just get through this, and then they are able to get out the door. Um, with with afternoon or evening activities that may change, we would recommend sometimes that you just use a Velcro strip and you have different pictures so that you're able to swap pictures in and out as per the needs of your family. Do try to go through the schedule with your child a couple of times a day, particularly if they're more anxious or if they have high sensory needs and that they need that extra time or extra support to prepare themselves for a change. Um, and the more able or the older a child is as well, of course you want them to start checking the visual schedule and start and doing some of that planning for you as well. I suppose the key bit here is if we can prepare their nervous systems, then that helps their emotional regulation as well, and helps them take part in the activities that they want to take part in as well. If your child has more language issues, then keep things very simple, using pictures, um, or maybe even a storybook, if if needed. Um, um, and many of you will have come across something like this, which is a very simple planner, just a first and then. So first we're going to have breakfast and then we're going to go to school. First I'm going to pick you up from school and then we're going to watch TV. First we're going to watch TV, then we're going to go to Nana's house. And it's very simple. Some people like having a small whiteboard in their car, and they can draw out the picture of what's going. So first I'm picking you up in the car from school, and now we're going to go to the shop, and that allows um, the child who may have language issues or the child who's highly anxious, it gives them an extra visual clue about how is their day, how the next hour is going to go for them, how the next hour and a half is going to go for them, and allows them prepare their nervous system for that unique sensory environment that they're going into. Um, so Aileen, I think actually sorry. So back over to to you.
Yeah, perfect. So we're going to talk a little bit more now about one particular system, and that's the proprioceptive system. And you would have heard a bit about this in module 1. We really consider it the power tool for regulation. So of all of the sensory systems, it tends to have the most organizing effect on our nervous system. So it's very rare that it would over alert your sensory system, and actually it can have a calming effect while you're doing the activity, but also for a period of time afterwards. So the effects are long lasting, and oftentimes we would say, we talk about using our big muscles or doing some heavy work. This is the sensory system that we're talking about engaging. So there's some examples here, and we're going to go into them now, where the little boy is doing wheelbarrow walking, really, really powerful. You're weight bearing through your joints there on the hands, and also it's heavy work for the child carrying the legs. There's some peanut ball activities going on there, some jumping on a trampoline, hugely effective sensory proprioceptive based activities. So some examples of heavy work and proprioceptive activities would be things like carrying very heavy or weighted bag. We talked about that earlier on about weighted products. So having your child carry the shopping in, or bringing books from classroom A to classroom B at school. Teaching your child things like wall push-ups or chair push-ups. So using your own body weight, you don't need any extra materials. You can just simply do it sitting down and push your bum and feet up off the chair using just your hands, or against the wall. Things like pushing household equipment around the place, the Hoover, wheelbarrow, bringing in the bins, lifting the laundry baskets. Anything that's in your home that you can think about that your child would be happy to engage with, or as part of your daily routine, that can really, usefully be used to regulate. We talked about the trampoline earlier, and Trish mentioned that sometimes when we combine vestibular with proprioception, it can be very calming and organizing. So it's got that linear movement up and down, the bouncing, but it's got lots and lots of input to the ankle and knee joints when the bouncing happens. Things like tug of war. We talked about the wheelbarrow walks. Gym ball activities. When we do this course face to face, we give you all the opportunity to try some gym ball activities. There are some lovely ideas. You saw on the last slide where a child is lying on their tummy and they're taking their weight through their hands as well, and they can do an activity in that position, doing press ups over a gym ball. If you need to if you're thinking that things like this might work for you or your child, please come and talk to us or give your OT a call, and we can discuss or send you some videos to give you some more ideas. Also, the power tool of proprioception can be used in the mouth. So when we talk about using really crunchy or chewy foods like granola, bagels, rice cakes, dry fruit, they can really engage the jaw and be very powerful. For younger kids, things like wrapping them in a blanket or a towel and giving them that tight cocoon, or even in a big cuddly beanbag and giving them a squeeze in it, they can be very, very powerful. Rolling the large ball over your child when they're on the floor back and forth, that can also be very, very powerful as well as a calming activity. And I suppose the other plus for a lot of these is because you're engaging those large muscles, you're also working on developing your child's muscle tone and their strength. So a lot of these activities have can be useful from that point of view as well, and help with their stability and even fine motor skills later on.
So yes, sorry, Aileen, this is a regulation passport. So this is something that we don't cover in depth actually in this presentation. It's something that we use with older children, much older, kind of almost that preteen, those preteens. And those are young teenagers. So do talk to your OT about that specifically if it's something that you think would be useful for your for your young for your young person or child. The one that we often use, and we mentioned it before, is "Are you feeling like Winnie the Pooh?" Tigger Eeyore as a way of communicating with your child around this. So we've covered a lot so far. I think that we've covered the physical things that you can do around the sensory systems in terms of calming and alerting. We went through all the different types of tools, the chewies, the pressure garments. And all those tools that you can use as an adjunct to help your child's regulation. We mentioned planners and the importance of that, and Aileen has gone through in detail there about the importance of proprioception and getting as much proprioception really as you can into your daily life. Finally, in terms of things that we would like you to consider for your child is just to always have that sensory hat on when you're looking at your child's environment. Usually the calmer, the quieter the environment, usually that has a more supportive and nourishing effect on your child's sensory regulation. That's not always possible, obviously, in preschool or school or out and about in the community, but certainly at home, that if you can do a brief check of the senses so that there is um, a, at least one space or one spot that your child can go to in your home, whether it's between the couch and the shelves or under their bed, or if you have the space that they have a spot in their bedroom, that their nervous system can take a little moment just to completely relax. So how do you do this? So you just do a check from your own senses. So check that noise is reduced, and including your own. So you can use your like a low monotone voice. Turn the radio down. If it's not possible to turn the radio down, make sure that maybe you have lyric instead of Phantom FM on, or check that lights can be that check for lighting that's too bright or maybe is causing flickering. Um, Check with your child about their clothes. Are they the most comfortable that they can be? Is there anything too tight or irritating them? Do they feel cozy or comfortable and um and relaxed. And check as well for strong smells. So these can often be the invisible invaders of our sensory regulation. So strong perfume, coffee from somebody's, the smell of coffee from somebody's breath or coffee brewing. Um, if it's cleaning day in your house, it can be the lingering scent of cleaning products. Um, it can be smells from a kitchen that have filtered out into a hallway. So just do a smell check as well. Um, and try to reduce or minimize as much as you can. Obviously, clutter um, is um, is a normal occurrence in family homes, but sometimes for our children who are visually sensitive and have quite a small cup for visual stimuli, it can be overwhelming for them to walk into a room that is covered in that there's stuff everywhere. A simple solution is to have a flannel blanket or a simple blanket or a sheet and just cover over that mess, particularly if it's a time that you want them concentrating, so it's a time that you want them regulated and listening to you, so for homework or for chat time or for one-to-one time with mom or dad. Just cover over that visual mess so that our visually sensitive children, that you're literally blocking it out for them. Um, Providing a hideout or a quiet place to go. We'll show an example of that to you in a few minutes. Always breaking activities into small steps. Um, and preparing your child for changes using the visual aids that we talked about before. Um, and involving your child in routine activities in home and in the community. So as as much as is possible for your family, especially with our older gangs. So our gang, I suppose, that are heading into later primary school years. Um, involving them in the decision making around their routines, around their activities of daily living. Um, you know, what kind of shampoo do you want to use, this shampoo or this shampoo? Um, Pick your own towel out for your bath or for your shower. Very simple choices like that can allow a child to have a little bit more control over the sensory input going into their system. Um, this is what we were talking about earlier about the a cozy space, so or a retreat, a place within your home that your child can that really gives their nervous system a chance to calm down and really settle. So you can see these. We'll show you. This is the website sensorylife.com, and they have some lovely examples here of sensory retreats. So you can see it can be anything from like an armchair with some heavy blankets on your child, not necessarily weighted blankets, just duvet or big thick flannel blankets, big beanbag that your child can really get down into. Some families have capacity to have a swing within the home or in their garden. And I'm sure some of you will have noticed that as well, that lovely back and forth rocking um, can be very calming for the nervous system. As we know, if it's inside, you can throw a blanket on top of them. It's very calming for the overall nervous system. But for your child, it just feels like a nice place to be, and a little break from the sensory onslaught sometimes that is their life. Um, so we'll just before we finish up, we're going to go through bring all of this together and go through what a sensory diet might look like for some of our kids.
Yeah, so in practice, I suppose if we think back to module 1, when we learned about the cups and we learned that you can have a big cup or a small cup, we're going to look at an example of a sensory diet for somebody with a big cup, so an under responsive child. So just remembering again that if you have a big cup, you need lots and lots of sensory information to fill your cup so that you feel regulated and you get what you need. So this is an example of a sensory diet for a younger child. So we're looking at what you can do from first thing in the morning. So before preschool, you might get lots and lots of sense or tactile information into that system by having a shower straight away. So you've got the temperature change, the feeling of the water beating against the skin, and the noise, obviously, of the shower. So lots and lots of rich sensory information coming from a shower can be calming or it can be alerting. Having an opportunity to go outside to play if that's possible. So you're getting movement in, maybe some heavy work. And then even in thinking about what you're eating, what's going into your mouth, and what orally you're doing to help your regulation. So things like crunchy cereal, cold milk with that, or cold fruit juice can have a very organizing effect on the system, or that cold or zesty taste can be very alerting as well. So then during the preschool day, things that we would suggest sometimes to staff in preschools to help with the child's regulation would be, using a sports top bottle and having that to suck on throughout the day. Try some chewy foods like cereal bars, or we talked about examples earlier of the heavy work type foods to get your mouth working: rice cakes, bagels, dry fruit, crunchy apples, and maybe looking at what position you do activities in. So rather than maybe sitting, or like for certain activities, it might be an opportunity to stand or to kneel, or maybe to use one of those move and sit cushions that we talked about for circle time, instead of having to sit still. Not that that's an absolute in preschool, but then looking at the next part of the day, coming on to lunchtime, again thinking about what crunchy foods you can have, how you can stimulate the mouth. Later on in the day, when the child comes home from preschool, again getting an opportunity to employ that kind of power tool again, get moving, running and jumping games, games that involve the large muscles. So there might be specific activities they want to do with mum or dad, or it might be going to the playground on the way home, or having 10 minutes on the trampoline before coming in for lunch, or going to do the next pick up from school. So it's just looking at what you can fit in there to get that sensory snack, I suppose, that we talked about. Later on in the evening, then using that aspect of the preparation and the sensory diet that Trish talked about, using a schedule to keep everybody on track, so what's down the track. So having a schedule for the evening. So dinner, there might be wine down, there might be TV, or they might be playing with dad, or there might whatever it is, bath, teeth, story, bed, so that it's visually presented, and that can definitely help with the sensory diet as well. Having fidgets I mentioned there as well, and then looking at cutting down on the alerting activities closer to bed. So there's examples there of having the lava lamp, which is a calming visual stimuli. You might be reducing the lighting. You might hoping cutting out screen time within an hour of bedtime, if and when it's possible. Some evidence there around screens and lighting, and the effect it has on our systems, and helping us to wind down. Maybe listening to some calming music to wind you down for bed. So that's just a basic example of a sensory diet for somebody who's got a big cup. So they need lots and lots of information during the day to keep their system, keep their regulation in the green zone. But also then there's the end of the day where you need to get that down into that blue zone that Trish talked about earlier to help get to sleep. So it's just about finding the right mix of sensory snacks and sensory activities for your unique profile. Okay, so I think Trish is going to talk through maybe
our kid with our child who is the opposite to the one that Aileen went through. So this is somebody who wakes up and has an over responsive profile, or a small cup for sensory input. So this is a child who's who doesn't need a lot of stimulation to overflow, or to feel overwhelmed within the world. So of course what we're going to do with what we're going to encourage this child to do is really gentle wake up, maybe even things like get them up a little bit earlier to give them a longer lay-in. Maybe they need to be in the sitting room for a few minutes, for 15-20 minutes on their own, or to have brekkie on their own before the siblings join them. Or they may just be somebody that you go in and you open the curtains and you just let the natural light, and you talk to them very gently, and you just gently rouse um their sensory their nervous system. And you want to keep their morning routine pretty much in that vein. We don't need lots of erratic activity for this child. We don't need a big input of sensory stimulation. So we may have a visual schedule that confirms the morning plan for this child. Clothes are probably going to be picked out the day before. Um, Probably something regulating first. And for somebody with a small cup, we're talking about a preferred hot breakfast, maybe wearing their fluffy dressing gown with their cozy socks, um, and um and that's so it's kind of a low key morning for this child because we're really respecting their sensory profile and trying to allow them to stay in their green zone for as long as possible. So during school for this child, um obviously what would be really useful is a whole class a visual schedule, so one on the wall where the whole class follows it. So if our child who has the over responsive profile, it begins to feel anxious or begins to feel a bit overwhelmed, they can check the wall themselves. Um, Lots of advanced warnings about what's going to happen. Um, Introduce a quiet time or quiet space, such as a dark den for in the preschool day, and in a school sometimes it's just a sensory break from the classroom. Sometimes it's a tuned in teacher who you know gives your child some jobs which require them to up and leave the busy classroom and have a walk down the quiet corridor and back. Um, and sometimes it can be more specific depending on the needs of the child, where an SNA or another teacher may take your child out for some calming sensory specific activities. Um, Recognizing and knowing when compromises are needed. So, for example, that the child, if they're going to be practicing singing or there's going to be a whole class happy birthday, can the child go and do a job at that point? Can they stand at the door? If they're comfortable, can they pop their headphones on? Um, and then, in conjunction with your teacher, consider any sensory tools that could be used to help your child feel calmer. As Marianne said, or as Aileen said earlier, the move and sit cushions are really common in schools now. Sensory and weighted lap pads which are really calming, are very common. The uh, use of fidget tools within the classroom or oral tools, safe oral tools are very accepted and familiar to teachers now as well. Um, and then lots of regulation movements, proprioceptive movements, so during the day as well, like a typical school day would have plenty of opportunities for movement. Um, so during break time, which can be quite overwhelming for our kids with small cups, because if you think about it, break time is very unregulated and unstructured, and lots can be happening. So to try and establish a routine, I have my lunch over here, and then I go outside and I walk around the outside of the yard for a while. Um, some chewy resistive foods, and the sucking on the resistive sports bottle as well. These really help empty out our small cups. Um, for these kind of profiles, so really dense chewing food if possible. So after school, this is when we really notice it for our kids with the smaller cups. um they usually need like immediate chill out time in a quiet space before they can re-engage with family life. So these are the kids that need to throw themselves on the couch or head up to their bedroom. They may be the ones who want to watch TV for 20 minutes, half an hour while nibbling on one of their favorite snacks. They just need to disengage to restore themselves so that they can get back involved again. Using the visual schedule to map out the evening for the family. And then lots of heavy muscle activity. So if you're helping with some chores, going for a walk with the backpack. And then bedtime is very similar to the other child. To the child with the bigger cup, it's that usually a low arousal hour before bedtime, so reducing the screen time, replace with comics or books, um, and and watching your own arousal levels as well. So making sure that you're modeling for your child what you'd like for their nervous system. So you're reducing your tone of voice, your volume, um, you're choosing books and dim lighting that is conducive to um having a sliding from that green zone into the blue zone and then into the sleep state. Um, So just before we finish up, we're just going to give you a taster of what the live session is going to be like. Um, and
Yeah, so we're going to go through a sample problem solve a scenario. Um, we've we're going to talk about an example of a little girl called Lucy, but what we'll do is we'll talk through the issue or the challenge that she's having. So press the pause button, red light, and we'll put on our sensory glasses, our sensory hat, and we'll look at the issue really around what the sensory challenges are, because we all know that there could be other reasons. There could be language challenges, or there could be learning challenges, or there could be behavioural issues. We're going to tune into what's happening from a sensory perspective, and we're going to make a plan. Okay, so the example that we're going to talk about is a little girl, Lucy. She's falling off her chair at school, always seems to be moving about, finds it hard to sit still or to stand still, and she bumps into things and crashes all the time. So we're going to stop and think, first of all, what sensory systems are involved here in this challenge for Lucy?
so when we see movement at all being mentioned, whether it's purposeful movement or what appears to be non-purposeful movement, that then we always think about the vestibular system, and we say, okay, vestibular system's involved here in some way. Um, the other key clues that jump out for me here are that bumping and crashing. And so when I think about someone bumping and crashing, I think about their proprioceptive and maybe their tactile system a little bit as well, getting stimulated by that.
And the other clue there is the falling off the chair, where that proprioceptive system of not quite knowing when her body is gone too far to the side, too far to the end of the chair, and she's about to fall off, just not tuning in enough to that clue. Again, that's the proprioceptive system not quite in sync for Lucy. So now we have an idea of the systems. Um, what do we think about whether they're under or over responsive? So let's have a think about Lucy's cup. So I'm thinking from what we were just saying about the crashing and the falling off the chair, I'm thinking Lucy has a big cup for proprioception. She's not getting, she needs lots and lots of intense information to meet her needs there with her regulation. So I'm thinking she's not getting enough. She needs intense, she's crashing against things to get more proprioception. So I'm thinking
Yeah,
she's under responsive.
she's definitely looking for that information, isn't she? She's
Yeah.
definitely looking for where are my boundaries in this environment.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. And then I suppose what can we do? What can we do practically to help Lucy? So,
so what we with so we're saying that she has a big cup, so we know that and she seems to be stimulating her vestibular and her proprioceptive system. So I guess we would go back to that and we look at it from a sensory diet point of view. We'd be looking at trying to get her to do some more proprioceptive and vestibular rich activities more often throughout her day. So we might use some of the power tool strategies that Aileen had gone through in those slides. You might get her to do wheelbarrow, some wheelbarrow activities with that peanut ball. This is a little girl as well, looking for that vestibular bit. So is there some swinging or some movement that we can incorporate both at home and in school through sensory or movement breaks with her? And
mm-hmm.
lots of that heavy work, isn't it? We really want to, we really want to dose Lucy's sensory system with some heavy work. Um,
I'm thinking about that handout that you all have in your resource packs with the table that we talked about at the start of today's webinar, and just looking at all of the alerting ones that we have for the proprioceptive and tactile. So the cushion that we talked about earlier, the move and sit cushion, that's going to give her some movement on her chair, but it's also got some bumps, so it's alerting her tactile system as well. So that's going to give her a little bit more information about where her body is on the chair. Might help her to stay on the chair a little bit. I'm thinking about the TheraBand that we saw in one of the pictures earlier that could be tied against the legs of the table or the chair, and that she can push against with her legs. It's going to give her some resistance, some proprioceptive and tactile input to help stimulate that system and start filling her cup even more.
And then even on a practical level, if this falling off the chair is really disrupting her participation in school, as a short-term measure, would it be possible for her to move to sitting next to a pier and a wall, so that that on one side of her she has a very definite physical boundary, so that when her body pushes up against that wall, she's getting some really strong feedback. Oh, that's where I need to be on my chair. Some short-term options there as well for her.
And on a very practical level, more than anybody else, Lucy needs to have the right size desk and the right size chair for her. So if it's at school that that's checked, that her feet are flat on the floor when she's sitting well, or if it's at home for homework or for meals, maybe she needs to have a little footstool under her feet so that she can push off that, or something tactile under her feet that she's getting input from, but that she's not got these dangling feet, that she's on a chair at the island, or that's not going to suit Lucy's needs. While she might like the movement of it, it mightn't be the safest option. So giving her support and a really, really well-fitting furniture is going to really be important for Lucy.
So that's really how we are hoping our live session will go. We're hoping, please email your OT any specific scenarios like this that you have for your child, and we can talk through them. You can send them in anonymously, or if you're willing to share them on the day, and we'll just bring together all the information from module 1 and module 2 and turn it into more practical solutions and problem solving as a group for our live session. Thank you to everybody for attending today. I am just going to try and show you those two websites that we mentioned earlier. One is
one is the HSE website, isn't it, Trish? So it's
yeah,
it's got some resources on there, from Cork.
Yeah, so we can send you that link on an email. Again, just contact your OT for that one. So the local HSE in Cork Kerry have put up some very useful, a really useful handout on sensory strategies. So we can give you that link in the live session as well. And then the other one that we wanted to show you here was sensorylife.com, and this was the one about all the different types of a sensory retreat. Aileen, can you see that?
Yep, I can see that.
Brilliant. So you can see lots of different options there. And then the other one is now, people come to this webinar regardless of diagnosis. It's open to anyone who has sensory processing difficulties. Some of the children who attend do also have an ASD diagnosis, but not everybody. However, some of the ASD, the autism organizations, have excellent resources on sensory processing, and so we always do share them when we find good ones. So please, if your child doesn't have ASD, ignore the ASD part, but do have a look at the Middletown Centre for Autism. Their sensory processing resource page is really, really good, and they have some examples as well of how to use the tools. They have little videos. So we do recommend that people go and have a look at that as well, specifically around the sensory processing bit. So I'll see now if I can stop sharing that, and I think we're back on there, Aileen. I think we're okay. Thank you everybody for attending and for taking the time to listen and to watch us, and we're looking forward to completing our webinar at the live session.
Great. Thanks everybody.